So for this final round, you may have noticed that I haven't gone into great detail with slides for either Godzilla or Mothra. I will remedy that now. So in Rebirth of Mothra 3, thanks to Mol, one of Mothra's fairy, the Elias, sacrificed her life energy to help Mothra go back in time. There, Mothra fought and slew Cretaceous King Ghidorah. But this badly damaged him, and then he pretty much went comatose. Prehistoric Mothras arrived, which I don't know where we are on the time scale here. These Mothras could be older than the ones that fought and died fighting Ghidorah. I don't know. But anyway, they arrived and cocooned Mothra. Mothra remained in this cocoon egg for millions of years, acclimating, absorbing the energy of the earth. We already saw what happened when one of the oldest trees kind of bonded with Mothra, turning him into Mothra Leo, giving him a massive power boost. Well, this is that times 100. After millions of years, Mothra returned to the present. Turns out he was there all along. I kind of like to think about whenever you watch Rebirth of Mothra and Mothra is fighting Ghidorah, like a couple miles away, buried underground, is Armor Mothra, and you just need to wake him up and he's going to clean house. But he arrives, and his transformation scene is beautiful. It's been a while since I really talked about just the filmmaking, what I love about these movies. As I mentioned previously, getting into these talks, these power scaling talks, really helped me get more into the nitty-gritty of the filmmaking process. I just love these movies, and this Rebirth of Mothra 3 I think is underrated. And this whole sequence is just beautiful. Armor Mothra proceeds to fight Grand King Ghidorah, and his horn beam, this beam here, I said horn, sorry, forehead beam, blasts through Grand King Ghidorah's barrier like it's nothing. Grand King Ghidorah's barrier previously was able to absolutely negate Rainbow Mothra's energy attacks, which when you look at them, when you really, like, I have analyzed them, I've gone over ways to quantify and make it comparable. They are up there with Godzilla's Spyro Blast. Which is why I think Godzilla's Spyro Blast may not be able to, maybe not on the first couple tries, I don't think they could overpower Grand King Ghidorah's force field. But here, Armor Mothra's beam cuts straight through and burns his entire backside, as demonstrated by the volume of smoke erupting out of his back here. But Armor Mothra, his entire body is like a weapon. Here, his razor-sharp wings cut Grand King Ghidorah's wing right off. And to me, that is something that really makes Armor Mothra extremely dangerous. He not only has powerful energy attacks that can most likely vaporize or kill many of the opponents in this tournament, many of the contestants in one shot, but he can also dissect you. Like, he could just fly down and in his wake immediately slash quite a number of these heavyweights in two. But he's also extremely strong. Did you know that? This guy doesn't just need to cut you in two. He could fly right into you. And it doesn't matter if you're, like, bigger than him. This is a shot of Armor Mothra completely overpowering Grand King Ghidorah. In midair, they collided. Grand King Ghidorah was flying at him, and the two clashed. And Armor Mothra just immediately starts, like, pushing him back. And even Ghidorah here looks stunned. Like, are you serious? Armor Mothra proceeded to knock Grand King Ghidorah out of the sky. But maybe you're thinking, okay, so Armor Mothra's energy attacks are top tier. He's practically designed to dominate every sort of close quarter combat fight we can think of. But I know he's called Armored Mothra, but is he really that durable? Can he withstand Burning Godzilla's attacks? Once again, remember, Rainbow Mothra, Cretaceous Ghidorah, flew into the mouth of a volcano, and within it, they were exposed to its tremendously powerful volcanic eruption. Volcanic eruptions are just, they're on par with atomic weapons. And Rainbow Mothra, again, survived a direct hit of a volcanic eruption literally blowing up in its face. Grand King Ghidorah's gravity beams, not only can they vaporize skyscrapers, they can immediately incapacitate Rainbow Mothra. So despite having a durability feat that puts Rainbow Mothra up there with Heisei Godzilla, I would say Heisei Godzilla is more durable, but they're comparable. Grand King Ghidorah, in one fell swoop, was able to take Rainbow Mothra down. That's how powerful the King of Terror's gravity beams are. Forgive me if I stutter. Again, I learned how to speak today. We're almost 5 hours into the stream, so we're getting there. Woo! Woo! Armor Mothra absolutely tanked Grand King Ghidorah's gravity beams. Like they weren't even there. Armor Mothra tanked beams that are powerful enough to incapacitate Heisei Godzilla tier kaiju. Think about that. Armor Mothra just tanked it. He just flew right through it. Grand King Ghidorah, even when he supercharged his gravity beams, which then, contextual understanding, logic, means these beams are even more powerful, still did absolutely nothing to Armor Mothra. Armor Mothra flew through them like they weren't even there. Armor Mothra, as far as Grand King Ghidorah and many on this list, in this tournament, Armor Mothra is virtually impervious to even the most powerful energy attacks in this entire tournament. You can only name the number of energy attacks or kaiju in this tournament on one hand that have any shot at hurting Armor Mothra. Finally, we get to Armor Mothra's finishing maneuver. I forget its official name. You guys can make fun of that. You can let me have it. I, for years, just kind of called it the Transcending Fate, but it does have an official name. And again, I'm sorry I forgot it, but the name of the attack isn't as important as its capabilities. With it, Armor Mothra phased through Grand King Ghidorah's body, and in doing so, began to destabilize the King of Terror's body on a molecular level. Slowly, Ghidorah's molecules began to unravel before the mighty King of Terror blew up, completely evaporated, no more, not a trace remained. Well, of course, there was still that whole wing that Armor Mothra chopped up that maybe or maybe won't regenerate into a new Grand King Ghidorah in like 60 million years, so there's that. Afterwards, Armor Mothra took off the armor and fully embraced its role as being eternal Mothra. Godzilla and Stuff Productions, welcome! Glad to see you. Toho had a statement that Mothra Leo, after the entire series, couldn't get past Super Mecha Godzilla. I'm not sure if I've ever seen that statement or if that's true, but I will take your word for it, and I will just say that Toho has said a lot of things. And even though they might say certain characters are more powerful than the other, I don't put their word like on a pedestal. I honestly think they don't really care about power levels or these fights like we do. They might say that just because they might think it's cool or interesting or it sells merch. But again, if that's what Toho thinks, then I think they're wrong. And I'm willing to challenge them on it. So, Toho, debate night. Let's have it. The King of the Monsters. Oh, Godzilla and Stuff Production says this comes from the Super Complete Works or some malarkey, I forget. Well, fair enough. How about for now I just grant you that, yeah, I'm sure they said that, but again, they've said a lot of things like so-and-so is more powerful than others, and honestly, man, I don't think Toho operates in the same sort of arena of constructive breakdowns as we do. I think they just don't give reasons. They'll just make statements and move on. And that is their Toho. You know, they're the creators. They have that. They're in that position, that luxury. So I grant that to them. Here's a cool shot of Godzilla taking out Mr. Shindo in one of the best shots in the entire series. Or as I like to say it, this is Godzilla taking care of crony capitalism. Hey, I can't go through a 5-hour stream without getting a little political. Let's start with the basics. Godzilla, like Rainbow Mothra, fell into a volcano and took its volcanic eruptions to the face like a beast. So at the very least, Godzilla and Rainbow Mothra, or the Mothra we're talking about here, is on equal footing, or fairly close. But here's why I think Heisei Godzilla is more durable. He and Mothra Batra larvae fought at the bottom of the ocean where they were consumed by an underwater volcanic eruption. This in turn led to Godzilla disappearing in a literal ocean of lava, where he was consumed by the very mantle of the earth. This is where the heat and pressure is insane. We're talking anywhere from, I think, thousands to millions of tons of pressure, molten levels of heat, and Godzilla swam through it and eventually emerged at the base of Mount Fuji, completely unscathed. Let's talk regeneration. Thanks to Fire Rodan's sacrifice and his radiation power boost, Godzilla reached a point where he could regenerate his second brain. Now, regenerating your cut, like let's say like someone slashed your arm and maybe there's a little left, maybe your body left a little scar, but it can still heal that over time. Many kaiju like Godzilla are capable of regenerating something like that within seconds. Like Space Godzilla, he was able to regenerate Mogira drilling into his neck like within a second. Less than, in fact. Godzilla could do something similar. But there are parts, I think we can all accept that vital organs are way, way harder to heal than just, say, a superficial injury. It would take more time, and there's no guarantee it would even work. But after Rodan's sacrifice, Godzilla reached a point where he could regenerate his second brain, and then, and I think there's an argument to be made that he could literally regenerate his main brain too if it ever incurred damage. I even shared a screen, a slide earlier that showed King Ghidorah in the Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah manga, firing his gravity beams down Godzilla's throat, literally melting Godzilla's brain. So it's not so far-fetched. But here's Burning Godzilla, whose regeneration is taxed to its upper limits, considering he's being ravaged by radiation, radioactive energy run amok, attempting to make him blow up or melt down. Here's Destroya's laser horn, nearly cutting him in two, and Godzilla, to his credit, healed most of the damage. You can still see the cauterized cut on his shoulder there that Destroya's laser beam weapon left. But for the most part, the fact that Godzilla was able to walk after this and keep fighting proves that he still was able to regenerate most of the damage within seconds. Godzilla and Stuff Productions points out that Godzilla tanked his atomic breath times 10,000 bare minimum. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you might be referring to the Super X2 fire mirror, correct? If I'm right, let me know if it's something else. You could also be referring to Mechagodzilla's plasma grenade. So, let's talk about that now because it's relevant. So yeah, one of the characters mentioned that the Super X2 fire mirror can absorb Godzilla's heat beam and fire it back at him 1,000-fold. I don't think... This is where I piss people off, and I do so proudly because I have an argument and I'm willing to back it up. This is one of those statements that strike me as hyperbolic because there's virtually no evidence that it literally is 1,000 times stronger than Godzilla's heat beam. Godzilla's heat beam, on average, is able to melt synthetic diamond. It's hotter than lava. Some sources point at it to being hundreds of thousands of degrees Celsius, which I think is legit. So in order for that to be true, you might think that the Super X2 can fire a beam thousands of times more powerful than Godzilla's beam, which means you might think it's basically like a nuclear bomb going off. And again, that's just not what it shows us. Now, this is where we might part ways. This is where, you're going to believe what you want. I'm going to believe what I want. Whatever. That's fair. I'm not trying to change your mind. I'm just trying to help you understand where I'm coming from. In order for me to accept that, I'd have to see the Super X2 fire mirror catch Godzilla's beam, fire it back, and literally do something that is thousands of times more powerful than whatever we've seen Godzilla's beam do. And I'm not convinced it did that. Godzilla himself did react to it. He did eventually try to retreat underwater and come back. And eventually, again, here's the thing, guys. Here's why I think the fire mirror thing, the fire mirror being 1,000 times stronger, is hyperbolic. The synthetic diamond was melting. Godzilla's beam melted the synthetic diamond. We have an in-universe contradiction on our hands. So if Godzilla's beam is hot enough to melt synthetic diamond, which has a melting point of around 1,800, maybe 2,100 degrees Celsius, someone can look it up. Correct me if I'm wrong. The fire mirror, if it truly is thousands of times more powerful than Godzilla's heat beam, it should have immediately, literally evaporated, melted the fire mirror. It did not do that. Either way you cut it, the Super X2 fire mirror is not thousands of times more powerful than Godzilla's heat beam. I do think it's a couple times, several times in fact. In fact, I think it sped up the entire fire mirror being melted down process. I think it actually is a design flaw. I don't think its engineers imagined that Godzilla would perhaps be able to live long enough to keep blasting the fire mirror with his heat beam. I think they even underestimated Godzilla's power. But yeah, those are my thoughts. Let's see what you think. Yes, the Super X2 fire mirror was the first instance of this. It was actually stated 10,000-fold in the movie. Godzilla's atomic breath is stated to be 500,000 degrees. Yeah, I talked about the 500,000 degrees, or 100,000 in the hundreds of thousands degree range. I grant that, but this isn't yet another moment where technically what's stated in a guidebook or on Toho Kingdom. That's where I got that information from. Perhaps you did too. And I'm affiliated with Toho Kingdom, so I'm not knocking them. I've done work for them. They're amazing. They do their homework. This source they're getting this information from is legitimate. But this is another moment where it's like the guide states one thing, but what we're seeing on screen, and then if we're really trying to make, calculations, measurements, we're going to either have to negate one, ignore one thing, like, all right, the source book is wrong on this, or we just chalk it up to this is a movie. Let's just move on for our own sanity. And I want to read this next part from Godzilla and Stuff Productions before continuing, because Godzilla and Stuff Productions, thank you so much for your responses here. I appreciate it. This weakness is actually fixed in Mechagodzilla. The plasma grenade was given cooling elements and limited in its use to regulate that extreme heat. Ironically enough, I think one of the sources states that the plasma grenade was only several times a multiplier of Godzilla's own heat beam, as opposed to the Super X2 fire mirror being hundreds or thousands of times. So, again, the source books even contradict each other. That's why empirical evidence reigns supreme. Anyway, back to my analysis. Heisei Godzilla is a powerhouse. Here, he not only lifted and curled the 150,000-ton Mechagodzilla, he swung him around and then threw him. This is a mind-boggling feat. Heisei Godzilla is one of the strongest Godzillas out there. He remains in the top tier, in the top power rankings of Godzillas, at least when it comes to brute strength. But let's get to Burning Godzilla. This guy is containing enough energy that it would engulf the entire planet and destroy it. So as far as energy supply goes, he's got immense power. This is definitely represented in the form of his Spyro beams, which, by the way, become way more powerful throughout the movie. Here we can see the Spyros here around his heat beam, but I want to point out later when they get even more powerful, they take on a more silvery, light-like color hue. Here they're more like orange, yellowish spirals. Still devastating nonetheless. Here they are taking out pretty much an entire skyline in one fell swoop. Godzilla was eventually temporarily halted by the Super X3, which resorted, instead of using cadmium missiles or fire mirrors, actually used cadmium. Okay, I tripped up there. Not only cadmium, but freezing light beams. I don't know, it's a movie. But these beams, I believe I've read, are in the negative, I'm trying to remember. I think they're like -6 degrees or around a -100 degrees. Not absolute zero, not like Kiryu's absolute zero canning cold, but pretty cold stuff. And eventually Burning Godzilla went from burning to meltdown. That's where, instead of exploding, he now creates a massive explosion that then begins to burn and bore a hole straight into the center of the Earth, which makes things even more catastrophic. For the interest of this debate and my analysis, I am treating Burning Godzilla and Meltdown Godzilla as the same entity. I do. If you wanted me to choose, okay, let's be super specific here. Meltdown Godzilla is way more dangerous and more powerful than he was when he was Burning Godzilla. So even though I'm calling this Godzilla Burning Godzilla in this tournament, it's Meltdown Godzilla. I'm according him like his Meltdown tier level feats, accomplishments, and such. I don't think we need to, I think that's we're kind of getting into the semantics territory. I mean, I've been getting there. We've been in the semantic realm for a while now. That's kind of what power scaling, power debates are, right? Power analysis, it's all semantics, right? Right? No, it's not. No, it's not. So like Heisei Godzilla in his whether base form or supercharged form from 94, Burning Godzilla can unleash nuclear pulses, but unlike how they were previously, they are far more devastating here than they have ever been. In fact, getting hit by Burning Godzilla's nuclear pulse is the equivalent to getting hit by his spiral beams. They are hot, they are insanely powerful and explosive. As demonstrated here in this slide, where we go from here's Godzilla, you can see him in the right corner. I know there's a lot of light and smoke, but he's there. And then everything goes up in flames. But as I mentioned before, his spiral beam does get more powerful. And yes, sources do point to this beam being in the millions of degrees territory. Some might say that, okay, kind of cool in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, his spiral blast was around 1,000,000 degrees. It was a little cooler by the time it was in Space Godzilla. It was in the upper 900,000 degrees Celsius area. Okay, but I think we can all agree, and I don't know what any guidebook sources say here, but we can infer, we can see, we can quantify. His spiral beams are way more powerful in these final shots. Here, as they start making contact or close to Destroya, they just set the entire area ablaze. Even when they hit Destroya in the face, it blows off his upper right, well, I don't want to call it a cheek, it's his exoskeleton, his carapace, but you get what I mean. Destroya suffers grave injuries to the point where even this devil of a kaiju retreats by taking to the skies. Oh, Godzilla and Stuff Productions, I love you, man. Your responses are classic and also, I think, worthy of more discussion. So I apologize in advance if I don't respond to everything you say, word by word. If I missed anything, but you want me to talk about it, feel free to later after this live stream ends, leave a comment or anything, or any future subsequent videos. I am going to release edited, more, toned down versions of each of these fights I've been going over. So feel free to, let me know. You do mention that Toho claimed that Meltdown Heat Ray was literally infinite in power and heat, LOL. Yeah, they do. They say a lot of things, don't they? It's literally named the Infinity Heat Ray. Not gonna defend that one. This is why I love these movies, why I love Godzilla and this sort of stuff. Again, if you're at the point where you want Godzilla to win every battle, every fantasy fight against Superman or Goku or whatever, and you want to be like, well, he does have an infinity power heat beam, therefore he wins. I'm not going to stop you. If that's really what you want, if that's what you think, if that's what you want to believe, all the more power to you. I'm not saying this. I'm not being sarcastic either. I was sarcastic with some things earlier, but I really genuinely mean this. I really don't care if you disagree with me. There's none of this is rocket science. There's no right or wrong way to have these discussions. if you want to say that and believe it, we'll leave it at that. I'll just say, okay, cool. Yeah, long live Godzilla. Godzilla forever. But, like, it's just not how I work, man. It's not how my brain works. It's not how I approach this sort of thing. My power analysis, I have a whole methodology. I have it in the description box. If you want to read through it, it's like a little mini novel. And I'm willing to back it up. I also am willing to change it, revise it if you guys find any problems with it. I don't think it's perfect. I'm sure I've contradicted myself many times throughout this entire stream. But man, when I read something like that, it's just funny. Here's something cool I thought you guys would be interested from the Heisei Godzilla manga. In Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, Moguera has a force field that pretty much treats Mecha Godzilla's impressive arsenal like a joke. Moguera proceeds to absolutely just dismantle Mecha Godzilla. And we know Moguera is so dang awesome. He saves Godzilla here from Space Godzilla's hyper corona beam of doom. You know, just a side effect of it was making Godzilla's pores just bleed, his body rupture. But here his force field can handle it. Why is this relevant? In the Godzilla vs. Destroya manga, Meltdown or Burning Godzilla is confronted by not one, but two Mogueras. And he unleashes an atomic pulse that absolutely annihilates both. I'm telling you guys, manga Heisei Godzilla is on a whole different level. That's where you really want to if you can, try and pick those up. They're crazy. I am slowly but surely making progress in trying to get some of them translated, or at least key scans translated, so that I can give you guys better content in the future. I would very much love to do like a film manga breakdown or side-by-side comparison of the mangas and the films, because there's a lot of interesting stuff. But Meltdown Godzilla in the comic, or Burning, whichever, still Godzilla, is OP and would absolutely stomp in this debate, in this entire tournament. But until then, we're back to live action, Goji, and yeah. Before I give my verdict, I want everyone to take a look. Again, this is the final round. Burning Godzilla versus Armor Mothra. I am going to take a moment. I'm going to try and acclimate, because I'm tired. I can make it, though. I can make it. But we are getting near to the end, where I will have to leave, especially within the next 30 minutes. There's still more stuff I want to get to post-tournament, so I hope you all can stick around. But for a second, I want to hear from you. Burning Godzilla versus Armor Mothra. Who do you think wins? There's no right or wrong answer. If you're motivated by trying to convince me, empirical feats, on-screen evidence, things we can quantify, calculate, measure. The guides are important, but they're just that, guides. They're there to help guide our understanding, but not be the judge, jury, and executioner. I hope that makes sense. I hope you understand where I'm coming from. So let me know who you think wins, why. I want to hear from you guys right now. I will be right back. But again, tell me why. If you think Godzilla wins, tell me why. Why do you think he wins? I want to hear from you. If you guys are in the chat right now, I'll read your chats out loud. And yeah, I'll be right back. All right, let's read some of these comments. Godzilla and Stuff Productions says, I think burning takes it easily. Mothra Leo's molecule changing attack powers are clearly dependent on power. If they weren't, Aqua Mothra could have just turned Grand King Ghidorah into water immediately. It's funny you mentioned that. Aqua Mothra most certainly does have, kind of manipulation over the water, right? He was able to part the sea. So that's interesting. I don't know if Grand King Ghidorah, being an alien, evil dragon space monster, has water. Does he bleed? I think he does, but it's one of those weird alien anatomy things where I'm like, I don't know. You mentioned earlier, manga Space Godzilla lights up the universe. I'm being dead ass like they show it. I know exactly what you're talking about. They actually do not show the universe lighting up. What is happening in those scans, in those comic panels? A character, I believe an astronaut, simply says the entire universe is lighting up. Hyperbole. Yeah? I actually think this is like one of the best examples of what I've been saying. We don't actually see the entire universe light up. All we know is that there's this character, this astronaut who's about to die, is saying, oh my god, the whole universe is lighting up. It's a figure of speech. What? Is this astronaut, is this guy omniscient? Is he everywhere? Is he everywhere in the universe? How would he somehow know that? Again, figure of speech, not meant to be. The writers of these stories never thought people would be like, oh my god, really? Oh man, that makes him so much power. That makes Space Godzilla universe level. By the way, it then opens up an even greater can of worms. If Space Godzilla has enough power to light up the universe, and I'll leave it to all the mathematicians to do the calculations, how much energy would you need to light up the universe? 1, he should not have struggled with Godzilla. 2, the Earth would have been absolutely obliterated the moment he arrived, crash-landed into Birth Island. And finally, 3, are you ready for this? He wouldn't need Fukuoka Tower to feed him energy. He wouldn't need Fukuoka Tower to serve as an external power source. He wouldn't need it. He's got infinite energy that can light up the universe. Godzilla and Stuff Productions does make a comment that I think challenges, I think serves as a good counter argument so far. There's nothing to suggest that Armor Mothra has a level of power even remotely close to what was killing Godzilla by his own self-destruction. Yes. Burning Godzilla contained destructive energies that was literally, not figuratively, literally going to destroy the planet. More powerful than all nuclear weapons put together. Not only a line from a legitimate source, unlike the astronaut dude from the Space Godzilla manga, who, like, really, how are you supposed to know that? There are characters that are reputable sources who do give us information that is vital to increasing our understanding, and they are in the right, as the films would empirically show us. The point of the movie is obvious. Godzilla is a ticking time bomb, and he has enough power to wipe out the planet. Not only like glass the surface, but literally destroy it. How's Armor Mothra supposed to compete with that? Well, it's simple. Now, we could do maybe a little mental exercise, some mental gymnastics. Mothra, let's not forget, has been hibernating for millions of years. After time traveling and beating Cretaceous King Ghidorah millions of years ago, Mothra has been slowly but surely accumulating more and more power throughout the eons. So by the time he emerges as Armor Mothra, his power is so astronomical. I mean, just given how easily he bested Grand King Ghidorah, the difference is night and day. But Armor Mothra doesn't need to have more destructive power than the source of burning Godzilla's energy. And I need to make this very, very clear. There's a difference between possessing this energy and being able to discharge it in its entirety. I have no doubt Burning Godzilla is unleashing millions of degrees hot heat beams. Earlier I defended Gamera. I think Heisei Gamera is a powerhouse. I think he is underrated. I think his fireballs are like millions of degrees. The fact that Gamera was able to blow off one of his hands after surviving a point-blank Sendai level thermonuclear explosion to the face, yeah, I think Gamera's fireballs are extremely powerful. I think Burning Godzilla's Spiral Blasts put those fireballs to shame. There's a reason why Godzilla is here in the finals and Gamera is not. Not to knock the GOAT Gamera. But unless someone can prove that Burning Godzilla can unleash a beam of energy that maybe... It doesn't need to come close to, like, destroying the planet. But unless you could prove that it's way more powerful, like, absolutely eclipses what we saw Grand King Ghidorah do, which Armor Mothra absolutely tanked. He no-sold Ghidorah's gravity beams. I'm not convinced that Godzilla's spiral beams are going to be able to destroy Armor Mothra. Here is what I do think. I do think Burning Godzilla's spiral beams will absolutely hurt her. I don't believe in no limits fallacies. I don't believe in just saying just because we didn't see anything hurt Armor Mothra, therefore nothing can. I just mean, as far as like, where's our margin? We're starting, at the very least, we're starting with, Armor Mothra's durability being at trivially withstands Grand King Ghidorah's gravity beams that are able to burn, incapacitate, take down Heisei Godzilla tier beings of durability. Beings that could just wade through volcanic eruptions. That's the minimum. What's the upper limit? That's the mystery, and that's where I don't think there's anything conclusive. But I do believe Armor Mothra can neutralize Burning Godzilla. And this is such a fitting final end, because on one hand, you have two of the most powerful characters from the entire Heisei era run that I know of. On the other, if one wins, the Earth is doomed. Burning Godzilla, I know, I said I'm still not factoring it in as for these fights. His whole ticking time bomb about to blow up and destroy the planet, or melting down and destroying the Earth. It's not something I'm factoring in for the fight, or how, like, who would win. But after that, if he were to win, we're all doomed. But Armor Mothra's finishing move, again, what does it do? It phases through your body, and on a molecular level, it destroys you. It shatters your very molecules. Very similarly to what the Oxygen Destroyer did to the first Godzilla. Only that liquefied Godzilla's molecules instead. Armor Mothra has the perfect anti-burning Godzilla weapon. To the point where I bet the human characters in Godzilla vs. Destroya wishes they could have called the Elias and been like, can you, we have a problem with Godzilla, can you send Armor Mothra over? And we don't want to have to rely on Destroya, which is all kinds of madness. No matter how there... Okay. I don't think there's any strong evidence that burning Godzilla has molecular levels of resistance. I don't think there's any proof that he could survive an attack that specifically shatters your molecular composition. There's no proof of that. And I haven't even got into how I think Armor Mothra's lasers will be blasting, pulverizing him. I haven't even gotten into how I think Armor Mothra's wings could very well take off Godzilla's arms. We're getting straight to the end of it here. Godzilla has no resistance to Armor Mothra's final attack. Now, if I were to steelman the pro-Godzilla side, again, I would point out that his G-cells were able to travel through outer space. Somehow they were able to drift into a black hole and somehow didn't have their subatomic particles unzipped. And there they became Space Godzilla. The most horrific monster was born. But remember, G-cells are not invulnerable. Shirogami was able to pierce them with his little tools, with a syringe. They can be altered, and if they can be altered, they're not invincible. So there's an X factor here. And again, I grant Space Godzilla's origins. I'm not saying G-cells never went into a black hole and came out of a white hole as a new monster. I'm not disputing that. All I'm saying is there's an X factor here. There's something we don't know that explains how G-cells, which should not be able to withstand black holes, did. Obviously, we all know the writers of the movie had no idea how black holes work. It just sounded like a cool origin story. But again, I'm just trying to talk to you like in universe. Here's where we're at. And Godzilla and Stuff Productions counters with another good argument. Everybody learn from this. This is good. Doesn't the oxygen destroyer ray, that's Destroyer's beam, show that burning Godzilla was significantly resistant to molecule attacking moves? I love it. So the oxygen destroyer beam, as one of the, I forget the doctor's name, the guy who invented micro-oxygen. He says bluntly that Destroyer's purple beam of doom is the power of the oxygen destroyer. And the oxygen destroyer is a destructive, it taps into a destructive unknown energy, which is how it was able to liquefy the first Godzilla on a molecular level. So the fact that Godzilla can resist the oxygen destroyer beam, right, kind of points to that, points to him having molecular resistance, right? Here's where I challenge that, because I've thought of this through, and I would be interested to know what you guys think. If you think this is a good argument, or if not. Still got about 15 more minutes left before I gotta call it good, and I'll show you who I think wins. You may have already guessed it. But here's the thing. We can look at all the times Destroya used the oxygen destroyer beam and look at the level of damage, look at what it's doing to the environment, and it honestly does not really look like an oxygen destroyer went off. Here's my interpretation. Here's my takeaway. When it's bluntly states, when the characters state that, and the film itself is saying that Destroya wields the power of the oxygen destroyer, I would, and I'm going to move the slide here so everyone can see exactly what I mean. I don't think they mean just his beam, although, again, he's using the beam, and that's what the characters say. So there's a good challenge to where I'm going with this. I think they're talking about purely what happens when Destroya invades you on a molecular or a microbial level, or a cellular level, I should say. This right here is the power of the oxygen destroyer. It's exactly what it did in the first movie, Gojira. It's what it did to the first Godzilla. And this is what Destroya is capable of. The problem is his OD beam doesn't actually do this. Even when it blasts through humans, it doesn't skeletize them. Does that mean the humans have resistance? Molecular levels of resistance? No, it killed them after all. And you could maybe argue the filmmakers didn't want to get a hard R rating, but I digress. Like Burning Godzilla, who was a ticking time bomb, the clock is ticking. We will be signing off at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's in about 14 minutes. But the tournament is not over. Well, it's about to be. But I really want to know what you all think. Regardless of my verdict and who wins, again, I'm not an official source. I've already challenged the official sources. Toho, they could come out and tell me, oh, we think Armor Mothra would absolutely solo every Godzilla in the universe at the same time. Based on what, Toho? They're like, because we said so. Debate over. But I don't care what Toho thinks, guys. I'm more interested in what you think. Because this is a damn good fight. This is a worthy finale. The final round of this tournament, I don't think it could have ended on a better note. Like, this is one hell of a fight. Now, Godzilla and Stuff Productions points out, Burning Godzilla takes these hits and either simply resists them or is able to competently out-regenerate the molecular destruction of the ray. And this is where we disagree. If Burning Godzilla, if there was a scene like what we saw in the aquarium where Destroya was literally skeletizing, reducing all these fish to skeleton, if we saw something like that happening to Godzilla, like he's in the open water and Destroya's there and Godzilla's surging with OD and he resists, that would have been a great feat that could have perhaps stopped Armor Mothra from having a shot at winning this. But the question is there something like that? Did something like that happen? And you do go on to mention micro-oxygen. This is what one of the Destroya, the aggregates, did to Godzilla Jr. It had a xenomorph-like second jaw puncture Jr.'s chest, and he pumped him full of micro-oxygen. But here's what you need to understand what micro-oxygen is. Micro-oxygen doesn't act like the oxygen destroyer. It's very similar. Micro-oxygen dissolves, in this case it was dissolving Jr.'s flesh and siphoning energy, extracting energy. Godzilla resisting this is pretty impressive. He already has a high energy source. His power level is pretty high. But I don't think that means micro-oxygen was attacking him on a molecular level. While the effects do seem to differ as Destroyer gets larger, I would absolutely chalk it up to effects and film limitations. None of the information we're given suggests the effects get lighter. Okay, that's fair, and I will say that, yeah, there's a big chance that, like, again, it's a film. There are limitations. Not everything is going to be consistent, as you will. So I think that's a fair thing to say. As the target gets larger, this is simply the nature of fiction. When making a viewable fictional story, you very commonly can not actively show every small piece of damage to true scale once the power levels get higher. Again, excellent point. But then the same applies to Armor Mothra as well. I pointed out earlier that Grand King Ghidorah might actually have temporal manipulations, because in the past his younger self was in pain, and in the present he was feeling it. And of course he was distorting space whenever he was kidnapping all of Japan's children and teleporting them to his Dome of Doom. Who's to say Armor Mothra's attack wasn't having some effect over time and space, or hyperspace? Again, I think once we get to the point where we bring in the fact, or remind ourselves that these are movies and that, yeah, there are limitations, well, the same also applies to your interlocutor, to the other side. Guys, it's been an honor. We're now at the point where I'm going to reveal who I think is the winner of the Heisei Monster Tournament. The winner is Armor Mothra. Congratulations to Mothra. I'm sure Godzilla fans will hate me until the ends of the earth. But if you've been watching, whether you agree or disagree, I think it's important to at least understand, hey, here's my argument. I mean what I say. And a lot of counter arguments were presented that challenge, and I'm going to be blunt with you, man. A couple times I've gone back and forth on this. I think it is a very good argument to make that due to the destructive nature of Godzilla, burning Godzilla's biology, and the fact that he's literally unstable, he's more than just a nuclear explosion. He's all nuclear explosions. He's practically a star about to go supernova. One thing that I didn't hear or read anywhere where people have mentioned, because I've seen this matchup before and I've thought a lot about it, one thing I will say is this. I'm going to steel man the Godzilla side for a second. How do we know, even though I think this Godzilla doesn't have resistance as is needed to withstand Armor Mothra's attacks on his molecules, on his molecular composition, how do we know that as soon as Armor Mothra phases through Godzilla, through his core, through his body, how do we know she isn't instantly vaporized by the nuclear planet-wiping power that's radiating from within his core? I mean, it's like trying to fly through a nuclear explosion, right? Or a star, in a way. You're vaporized. So how can you destabilize the molecular composition of, like, let's say, a mini star, a miniature star, without burning? Hey, Godzilla guys, there's your argument. Because I don't really have a counter at that time. But at the same time, it's not really, I know I'm steel manning the Godzilla side, but remember how I started. How do we know? We don't. We don't know if Mothra simply becomes truly intangible, as in incorporeal, like he's unaffected by anything solid, by the physical universe. We don't know if he's flying through different dimensions to the point where he wouldn't be harmed by something like Godzilla's nuclear radiating heat. We don't know. But it is an argument, and it is something that I think if you feel Godzilla would